ladies and gentlemen, could be very entertaining and possibly dangerous. I'm going to play you a couple clips from some people who I've shared some of their information before. This is lining up perfectly. All I gotta say is just pay attention and listen to the message. Don't judge the messengers. Listen to the message, and in everything I've been showing you guys, here's your receipt. Time is short.
Burns here. We have a multitude of energetic events that are converging together starting now and going through this weekend in what I call a grand energy convergence. And these are typically linked to very striking or disruptive events, and that can occur across a multitude of domains, from social to political to geologic, for example, high magnitude earthquakes. And so the sequence of events is as follows. We have a coronal hole high-speed stream, which is set to impact the Earth, trigger a G1 storm, increase the solar wind velocity, and decrease that solar wind density, which is one of those factors that we look for as it relates to an increased probability of high magnitude earthquakes. And then right after that, early September 6th, we have Uranus stationing retrograde. This is the planet Uranus out at 20 astronomical units. It's going to appear stationary in our night sky before it then starts retrograde motion. And Uranus is the planet that's linked to disruptive Earth changes like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions and more. It's linked to that Promethean archetypal influence of sudden liberation or awakening. And Uranus is closely conjunct Sedna, a small trans-Newtonian dwarf planet that has an about 12,000 year orbit around the sun, and it's very close to its perihelion right now. So it's in the heliosphere interacting with the overall solar system, and Uranus at 20 AU is extending a leash out to it effectively, an energetic connection. And well, I use that conjunction of Uranus and Sedna as a forecasting tool back in July for the potential megaquake, which we did end up getting, that magnitude 8.8 megaquake. Well, they're less than 1 degree conjunct at this moment in time, and when you have a planet that stations, whether retrograde or direct, it amplifies its energies. Following up right after that, we then have a solar storm impact from a plasma filament which launched off from the sun, and that is expected to hit us late on September 6th, early on September 7th, and NOAA is estimating that that will raise the geomagnetic conditions from a G1 level to a G2 level. That at least is a possibility. So we're going to be having a geomagnetic storm from both of these solar influences as Uranus is stationing retrograde, which already creates this enhanced Promethean and Uranian energy signature, which is very much connected to earthquakes. And we have a full moon on the 7th. And well, it's not just any full moon, it is a blood moon. So it's a total lunar eclipse. The moon at its fullest position will pass through the ecliptic plane, meaning it'll get blocked by the Earth. So the Earth will cast its shadow on the moon, therefore casting into a blood red hue. And this is a very powerful energy signature. We're in eclipse season. This is the first eclipse that we have this September. We also have a partial solar eclipse that follows next. That'll be the new moon a week after that occurs. So around September 21st or 22nd, right before we have the autumnal equinox. And so we have this sequence going from coronal hole high-speed stream impact, triggering a geomagnetic storm as Uranus stations retrograde. Another solar storm follows up behind, likely increasing the geomagnetic volatility. And then we have the full moon turn blood red with this total lunar eclipse. And already when you have the moon in Earth's magnetotail and in the plazosphere, you have overall more energetic volatility within the magnetic field. And so that's also likely to contribute to slightly greater geomagnetic flux. Then after that, we have some critical planetary geometry as Mercury performs a superior conjunction with the sun, though that is after this week, and that specifically is around September 12th to the 13th. But this grand energy convergence leads into that critical planetary geometry, and there will be an earthquake watch after all this unfolds, and of course during, And while we're seeing some very unusual earthquake activity in Afghanistan, where there was a magnitude 6 earthquake that killed 1,000 plus people, now they've been having aftershocks and they haven't let up. And they are anomalously large for the size of that main shock. So to me, it looks like this is preliminary activity before a higher magnitude earthquake. That's not guaranteed, but it definitely looks like that. And while Afghanistan is right in the center of that total blood moon lunar eclipse, because that is going to be visible from Eurasia. We're not going to see it in North America, but Afghanistan is going to be right there at the apex of that. So very interesting grand energy convergence ahead of us. Hopefully we do okay. I think we'll get through it, but let's dive into exactly what this means. Now, before we get into at earthevolution.com, this is the 13th rotation of this coronal hole. You'll notice that's very, very large, though it used to be bigger. It looks like it's finally starting to get a bit smaller, and it has these trans-equatorial portions to it. So it is mostly there in the southern hemisphere. It is a positive polarity, so it doesn't connect the nicest to Earth's magnetic field, but as a result of this positive polarity, it does create stronger Birkeland currents in the auroral zone, and this trans-equatorial portion there will ensure that some of that high-speed stream will sweep by Earth. Because if it's really located just in one hemisphere, higher up or further down, then it can kind of flow below or above the ecliptic plane. This ensures that it will hit us. You will also notice this plasma filament that launches off there on the 4th. That is responsible for this solar storm that is going to come in. You'll see this pop off pretty quick. Also a lot of solar flaring just above it, but there's that plasma filament, high velocity. We'll look at that next, and that is following up after this coronal hole high-speed stream, which is again a high-speed stream. So there's not going to be much slowdown on that plasma filament as a result. That solar storm coming in isn't going to be encountering any slow solar wind structures. So it should arrive here on Earth sooner. And when you get that solar wind velocity to go up, that just in general increases geomagnetic volatility. And then to get a solar storm on top of that and get the magnetic field to bump up in strength and perhaps connect with a nice southward component, well, this could give us some pretty significant geomagnetic storming. So the official forecast is G1, G2, but with Uranus stationing retrograde and some of these other factors like the full moon and also that being a total lunar eclipse, I would just add like a wild card to everything over this weekend. So a lot could happen as it relates to Earth geologic events. I think the most likely thing would be significant earthquakes, but this could also be significant volcanic activity because we are seeing a lot of volcanic activity in 2025 and it seems to be building up to something. Earthquake activity too has also been notable. It's been the 6th strongest year for earthquake activity since we've had modern seismic measurements because...
Good afternoon or good night, everyone. Well, Campi Flegrei, the supervolcano, is the talk of the town again. I mean, the earthquake swarm, the big one, has eased down. We had some earthquakes at Vesuvius. We had another 1.8. But now scientists warn that one of the world's supervolcano is waking up because AI reveals 4 times more earthquakes at Italy's Campi Flegrei than previously thought. They say 50,000 earthquakes in just 3 years. And of course, these are microseismic earthquakes. But the headline is Campi Flegrei waking up. Well, it's been waking up for quite a while, since 2005, actually. And if you watch my channel, you've seen that headline before, but not in relation with Campi Flegrei. Santorini, that had this massive earthquake swarm also in February, same like this catastrophic, not with catastrophic results, but huge earthquake swarm in Campi Flegrei as well. So, of course, hundreds of thousands of people are at risk from this supervolcano that is waking up. We could see something at any time, probably not a supervolcanic eruption, but a phreatic eruption or a bigger earthquake. And of course, in the last few months, a series of powerful earthquakes for a volcano has shaken the region with 2 magnitude 4.6. And you have to put this in perspective. The engineers and the scientists say if we see a magnitude 5, that will end hundreds of thousands of people because of the buildings that will collapse. And we've just seen it in Turkey, in Afghanistan. These unreinforced masonry brick homes, they are the problem. So now the experts are warning that the number of earthquakes in the region is actually 4 times higher than so far announced. What does that mean? They have used AI to detect these microseismic quakes. So is there more power underneath the supervolcano? Is it closer to eruption or phreatic eruption than we're all thinking? Then all these studies tell us, and the studies do tell us that it's getting closer to do something.
The Solar Dynamics Observatory. It is 6:33 p.m. This is kind of in the middle of the images. I've got it paused here because we've got a kind of an abnormal flare, and it's coming from this area, and you can see the coronal mass ejection here. I'm going to play it through, but again, this is unusual, and it is directly Earth facing, and they are tracking a CME, and because these can be very dangerous because they're so long, and we've seen them spiral out, and the timing on them is usually pretty good. And I remember the last one that was this large that we tracked. It came not from this section of the sun, but just up to the left, and it was predicted to, and we looked at the timing and changed it over to from UTC to Alaskan time, and it was expected to hit at 5 p.m. that morning. It was very powerful too, strong. It woke a lot of people up. But one of the watchers here, and when it came in the comment, one of the subscribers, I can't remember your name, it's been a few years, but you said, BP, I set my clock at 5 a.m. that morning to wake me up to see if you were correct about this thing hitting the planet and where it would hit, because a lot of times if they leave the northern hemisphere of the sun, they kind of hit the northern hemisphere of the planet. This one's leaving the center, but it looks like it is more southerly directed, but that can fool you when you're looking ahead on images. Anyway, he said, I set my clock. He said the clock went off and the house shook at the same time. Now that wasn't my timing, but that's how accurate it can be, and it was a strong quake. If you're still a subscriber after all these years, come in and make a comment if you remember that. But I'm going to play it through. Then we're going to look at the CME tracking on this thing. The sun has been relatively quiet. We had a CME come in the other night. It was supposed to come in at 7. It hit at about 5. I was watching it. We didn't have we didn't have many strong quakes, but there were more 5s than usual. It wasn't anything big and powerful. This one may be a little different, but let me play it through. Again, it's going to go from the from the 4th to the 5th today. And here it will start yesterday, right there. You see a couple of those up in the northern hemisphere. See that? It's becoming very active. There's a different one, much larger. Check that out. We'll let it play all the way through. And I want to change the actual camera. And what this does is illustrate a really large coronal opening in the sun right here. You see that? What that means, especially in the southern hemisphere, is a lot of that is striking the Earth. And it increases the solar wind speed. It increases